Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Arthritis at Home. My name is Ellen, and I'm the Programs Coordinator for Arthritis Consumer Experts. Today, I'm joined by Michaela Khan, a PhD student and a running researcher at the University of British Columbia. Michaela, it's great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's going to be great to talk.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get into this very much so relevant topic and somewhat controversial from my, surface level of knowledge.
Yes, very controversial. We'll be hopefully busting a few myths on this.
Very exciting. So, Michaela, to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're involved in osteoarthritis research?
So my name's Michaela. I'm a third-year PhD student at UBC, supervised by Dr. Michael Hunt, and we work in the motion analysis and biofeedback laboratory in UBC Hospital. So just a little bit of background. My previous degrees are from Western University, and I was looking at more orthopedic biomechanics. And now I'm in the rehab science program here, and I mainly do running biomechanics, especially in people with knee osteoarthritis. And my interests are in stuff like gait retraining, footwear, and medical imaging as well. So what is biomechanics? So we look at the forces acting upon and within a biological structure, in my case, a human, and as well as the effects produced by these forces. So in other words, we study the physics of movement. So in my area of running biomechanics, we use a couple pieces of specialized equipment. And the first tool is motion capture cameras to track the movement of our body through space. So with this, we're looking at like angles between joints and then really just an overall picture of running biomechanics or running technique. And the second tool we use are force plates, which are essentially like a glorified weight scale. And the force plate measures how hard we hit into the ground. And by Newton's third law, so every force has an equal and opposite reaction, we can measure how hard the ground hits us back. And then we can combine all of those things. So the motion capture data and the force plate data, as well as some anthropometrics, so looking at like your body segment masses, to look at or to estimate the loads experienced by joints. And we know this from walking literature is important for those with knee osteoarthritis, because we found that abnormally distributed forces in a joint can lead to the progression of osteoarthritis. But that's all in walking, and nobody's really looked at it in running. And there's a lot of myths around running. If you run, it's bad for your knees, you'll wear out your cartilage. And we know in healthy people, that's not true. So running can be protective of getting arthritis. But what we don't know is if you already have osteoarthritis and you keep running, what will happen? Now, we know that people with osteoarthritis do run, and they can run very, very well. But we just don't know how safe it is yet.
So interesting, Michaela. I, think you bring up a really great point where we sometimes as researchers say like, oh, we know, this about walking. And then we almost misinterpret the research, say like, this must be what it is about running as well. And that's not true if we have not actually done the empirical research to look at what are the forces, what is the motion, involved in doing running. So very exciting.
Yeah, you got it. Running gets a really bad rep for being, like a brutal sport and like hard on the joints and whatnot. And I remember a professor before I started this work, he was like, you're gonna have such a hard time recruiting people with osteoarthritis. They don't run, they can't run. And I can say after a couple of years in this, they absolutely can. They absolutely can.
Can I ask, on a personal level, why the interest in osteoarthritis and running?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there was just a huge gap in the literature looking at this population. And I've always been interested in running. I've been a runner myself in my youth and, still hobbling along now. But just this was a massively underserved population. And we know like exercise is the first line of treatment for people with osteoarthritis, and running is one of the most popular and accessible sports in the world. So we hope to figure this problem out.
Yeah, well said, Michaela. And could you actually explain to us what the literature is? Because I am naive on on what research has been done before and what they've said about running in osteoarthritis?
So it's pretty much nil. There's not too much out there. There's only been one study that has looked at running biomechanics in people with osteoarthritis, which is a great start, but unfortunately it was very underpowered. It wasn't like a massively comprehensive view of running biomechanics, so they only really looked at forces within the joint and not so much like the motion capture data, as I explained before, so how the body moves as a whole. And yeah, just not enough people. So we got a good introduction to it, but we're hoping to expand on that.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess your research fills a gap because not only are you looking at the forces that are captured when you are on those force plates, but you're also looking at the actual movement. So how someone lifts up their leg and how that foot strikes the ground, and they then go through, I don't know running that well, but I can imagine, right, that we've all seen it, right? Like, I'm a really awkward runner. I take very small strides, and I've been told that I have a very heavy heel strike when I walk, and I've also been told that before. But we've also seen these people, especially in Vancouver, that just seem to glide along the ground.
Yes.
They're not even touching it. So I can definitely see how the actual quality of the movement, you could say, is different.
So if we're thinking about kind of optimal running technique, there isn't really an optimal running technique that exists. It's usually what your body adapts to. But we can adjust your biomechanics to serve different purposes. So for example, one of my projects in knee osteoarthritis is increasing people's cadence, or the number of steps they take per minute as they run, because previous studies in healthy people and people with knee pain have shown that the more steps you take per minute, the less force on your knee joint. And also there's some evidence that it can reduce your pain as well. So we think that this population is a really good one to explore.
Wow, that's really helpful and very practical to think about. Thank you, Michaela.
Yeah. It's an easy modification. You don't have to change your shoes. You don't have to change terrain, although you can do that if you want. But biomechanically, cadence is a good bet.
Well, can you actually share a little bit about the terrain? Just because, I've been told personally, like, don't run on pavement. It's terrible for your joint. And I don't know if that's true. I've also been told don't run on a treadmill. I'm like,
my best advice is run wherever you like, firstly. There is a paper that we published last year in the Journal of Sports Medicine that looked at the effect of running on our cartilage. And what they did is all these studies, we did a systematic review. So we synthesized 43 studies that MRI'd, or used magnetic resonance imaging, to take pictures of the knee joint before and after running to see what effects it had. And in the overall general consensus is that running does deform your cartilage in the short term. But then if you give it time to rest, it actually comes back to its baseline level. And when I say deform, we're looking at like the thickness or volume of it, and even the biochemical composition. And the interesting thing about compiling all that evidence is most of the studies were done running on hard ground or treadmills. So we don't have huge evidence yet to say, like, it's totally safe to run on treadmill, totally safe on pavement, trail, it's fine, up to you. But generally from those studies, your cartilage seems to go back to normal after running on whatever surfaces. But I will stress that that's mostly in healthy people. We haven't looked at it in people with osteoarthritis yet. So that's our next step.
Again, Michaela, like, I think touching back on your point of the body does adapt. To what degree when we have osteoarthritis? I think that's a question you're trying to answer. I love that.
Yeah, so we're doing that exact same study. So taking those pictures of your knee joint before and after running in people with osteoarthritis.
And we'll definitely link that paper that you were talking about before as well. And we look forward to your work. I do have a question. As somebody who, hasn't run for a while and is trying to get back into it myself, or perhaps another patient who's never run before at all, and they experience pain and fatigue, or perhaps they're just a little bit hesitant on running, but they do want to get into it. Like you said, it's a truly accessible sport. Vancouver happens to be a city that's very conducive to the sport itself. How or what advice would you give someone?
I'd say go for it within reason.
Okay.
So I'm not saying wake up one day and run a half marathon. It's funny, I would say like 80 to 90% of running injuries that we see, I'm not a healthcare professional myself, but our physiotherapist friends are people just doing too much too fast. So I would recommend a very graduated program. So maybe starting with some walking if you're not already doing that. If you are walking, maybe starting to do little running intervals. So walking for a minute, running for 30 seconds, and doing that a couple times and progressing from there. As well, while monitoring your symptoms. So if you're having pain when you wake up the next morning, you might have gone a little bit too far. So maybe dial it back a little, listen to your body. That's the most important thing. And we've also been finding with our participants in the lab, we prescribe 12-week running programs, and it's aimed to increase your mileage by about 5 to 10% a week. We have had incidences of people increasing their pain very slightly at the beginning of the program while their body is adjusting and adapting. But usually once you get over that hump, your pain is either maintained at that normal baseline level, or we've actually seen pain decrease, which I think has been one of the most interesting takeaways, biomechanics aside, that, yeah, movement is medicine and it can really help with your pain.
Yeah, but I think one of the takeaways that you said was we have to be able, or almost expect and prepare ourselves and our minds for, okay, my pain may increase the first 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks, but to know that that's part of the adaptation process, as long as we are keeping, like you said, within that 5 to 10% range of, I think we increase our overall distance mileage, then we should be expecting our body to be able to come back to a point of whatever our baseline pain was, or even, like you said, it could improve as well, right? There's the potential for that.
Yeah, we've had we're on, I think, our 42nd patient through our program so far, and I think nearly 30 of those have osteoarthritis, and we haven't had somebody go up in pain from the start to the end of the program yet. So that has been really encouraging. But that's not to say if you're experiencing like 8 out of 10 pain and you can't walk the next day, you've gone too far. So talk to your doctor and make sure everything's okay, but a little bit of pain is not a bad thing.
Thank you, Michaela. That was very encouraging. And do you have, any last few tips, pointers, things to watch out for people who run regularly, people who want to get
enjoy it. Running's not for everybody. You don't have to run, but again, movement is medicine, motion is lotion. So any way, if you have osteoarthritis, to move your joints within a safe range and something that's tolerable for you is, again, the first line of treatment. It's the best thing you can be doing to protect yourself. And I mean, I'm biased. Running is fantastic. There's so many great physical benefits and mental benefits. A lot are related to NEOA. So if it's something you're interested in, reach out to our lab here, get involved with your local running community. Vancouver has a fantastic running scene, and it's very, very inclusive. So I encourage you to get out there and explore.
Thank you for that, Michaela. And with that, we're going to share our resources and some of the studies that you have pointed us to. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact us at feedback@jointhealth.org, and we can pass them along to Michaela. Truths about running and osteoarthritis. Number 1, people with osteoarthritis do run. Number 2, there's no such thing as good versus bad running form. Instead, we want to focus on how we move in our own bodies. Number 3, pain doesn't have to signal that something bad is happening.
Instead, it can be a sign of adaptation. Things to consider before you start. Running isn't for everyone, but any movement is good. As long as you're enjoying it, then you know you're on the right path. Slow and steady progression is the key to injury prevention, no matter what activity you decide to partake in. And finally, check out resources, talk to a friend, or go and look for a community group, because you don't have to do an activity alone. And here are a list of additional learning resources.
With that, Michaela, do you have any closing remarks for us or our audience?
I just want to thank Ellen. You guys are doing such an awesome job at Arthritis at Home for bringing this information. And yeah, I salute you guys. This is awesome.
Thank you, Michaela. And I do appreciate how you really said, this is a choice and it may not be for everyone, but we hope that, you take this away. What you take away from this is, doing a little bit, serving your body, being okay with a little bit of discomfort, maybe even a little bit of pain at the beginning, but knowing that your body is adaptable.
You're stronger than you think.
I love that. That is our takeaway. One beautiful, concise sentence. And with that, we're going to thank everyone, and we're going to say have a great rest of your week. We hope to see you next time at Arthritis at Home.